It's springtime in the Rockies, Sun Valley in particular, and that means wildflower season. Hi, I'm Karen Bossick with Eye on Sun Valley. I'm here today with Kristin Fletcher, who is the president of the Wood River chapter of the Idaho Native Plant Society. Kristin, what got you into wildflowers and what makes it so cool to see them in our own backyard?
Well, thanks for inviting me to be on your program, Karen. My dad loved the out of doors, and so from the time I was a little kid on up, we just spent time in the wilderness area, including the sawtooths. But my real love of wildflowers came when I moved over here in the 1980s and started hiking the trails myself, and just it was so incredibly beautiful. And so I was just inspired to start learning about the plants and learning how they were used, how wildlife used them, how birds used them, why some grew in some places, why they didn't grow in others, that sort of thing.
Of course, this plant behind me, the arrowleaf balsam root, was well used by the Indians who used to pulverize the roots and turn it into flour. They also used to use the arrow-shaped leaves to stuff moccasins, to give them some padding, all kinds of uses. What can you tell me about it?
You know, Karen, it's one of my favorite plants too. One of the things I love about it is early in the spring it's blooming down by Twin Falls, and then as the spring progresses it works its way up the valley until in the summertime, like August, it's blooming at the highest elevations of Galena Summit. So it's a plant that's widely distributed, and it's just so beautiful with those big bouquets of yellow flowers. One of the other things I like about it is you mentioned the native folks use the seeds for food. Well, birds do too, and it's a popular forage for wildlife. And another thing that I like, and this is not about the flower itself, but it's about this kind of flower, is that these petals, like if I held this up to you and asked you, how many flowers do you see? You'd probably say one. But actually, each one of these petals is its own flower. And each one of the parts in the middle is one flower. So this is a composite flower, which means that it's composed of two different kinds of flowers, these petal flowers and then these disc flowers in the middle. Karen, another one of my favorite plants is the Penstemon. It's a large family with dozens of different species in it. One of my favorites actually is this little one right here. It's called the low Penstemon. Its Latin name is Penstemon humilis, like a humble penstemon. And one way you can recognize it is it makes a little cluster with short 8 to 10 inch tall stems and flowers on them. And they bloom early in the spring like this.
Now, Kristin, this flower here is all over the place this spring. It's not necessarily the greatest flower in my book because it's the death camas. Now, this is one of two camas, right?
You're right. This is the death camas, as you mentioned. The other camas is the camas that you find by the Camas Prairie near Fairfield. Those are the ones that the native folks would harvest the roots and roast them underground. They kind of caramelize. They're actually really delicious. Those are sort of friendly camas. This one is called death camas, and it is a very unfriendly camas. The camas by Camas Prairie grows in really moist areas. This obviously grows by sagebrush and hot, dry areas. So that's one way to differentiate. The camas in the Camas Prairie has a blue flower. This has a white flower. But it's called death camas for a reason. It's part of the lily family. It's got these long, narrow, kind of grass-like leaves. And then the flower stalk comes out from the top. This is another one of my favorite plants. I guess my list would be 100 plants long, but this is the Longleaf Phlox. We have two main kinds of phlox here. One is a cushion phlox that has little short, almost conifer-like, evergreen-like leaves, real prickly. But this is the Longleaf Phlox, and its leaves are longer, long and narrow. And it's related to the garden phlox. And one of the things I love about it is a year like this where it's blooming really abundantly, it just scents the air with the most wonderful fragrance. It's sweet, it's light, and this is a particularly good year for it. This sweet little flower is the Nevada pea. It's in the sweet vetch family, and it's closely related to our garden pea, or a sweet pea you might be growing up a trellis. And like those peas, it's got these little tendrils, and it uses those tendrils to climb its way up, and you'll oftentimes see it climbing up through sagebrush or other shrubs in the sagebrush steppe. The flowers look just like your pea flower, and it has a very light, sweet scent. This is called the false or mountain dandelion. And I prefer to call it the real dandelion because what we call a dandelion is just a weed. And this one is an actual native Idaho plant. It grows abundantly in little groups like this, and it's just a delightful springtime bloom. It's a fun one to know. Standing right here, the first thing that I notice is the scent of the Antelope Bitterbrush that I'm standing in. It's closely related, it's part of the rose family. And so because it's part of the rose family, it has that really delicious scent. And one of the kind of fun things about it in the springtime is it usually starts blooming really low. I call it kind of a flower skirt. And then the blooms work their way up until they envelop the entire plant. And as you're walking around trails in the Wood River Valley, you'll oftentimes get this delicious scent, and it will, this time of year, it'll be the Antelope Bitterbrush. Another really interesting thing about it is it's very high in protein, and so it's an important plant for deer and elk and pronghorn to eat.
I hope you enjoyed our Wildflowers segment. To my way of thinking, getting to know those in our backyard just gives us one more reason to enjoy the beautiful place we live in. Stay tuned, because we'll have more coming up. In the meantime, I'm Karen Bossick with Eye on Sun Valley. Until next time, I'm keeping my eye on Sun Valley for you.